Hey folks, Nick here from another BookTube channel, and today I'm going to be talking about some trashy Marvel novels from the 70s. I've got Fantastic Four in Doomsday by Marv Wolfman, and Captain America Holocaust for Hire by Joseph Silva. I read these as part of Garbogust, the media tie-in week. I bought these a while back in a secondhand bookshop. I saw them. I didn't know that these existed. I'm a big comic book fan, if you can't tell from the channel. These are. There were a few options to choose from at the shop. I grabbed Captain America and Fantastic Four because they're probably, of the choices available, my favorites of the Marvel characters, particularly Fantastic Four. So I was very curious to see if they would be any good at all. I didn't have super high hopes for them, and I was right for at least one of them. I was right to not have high hopes. So the first one I'll talk about is the Fantastic Four. Fantastic Four in Doomsday by Marv Wolfman. The story in both of these books is, I believe, original to the novel. It's not like adapted from a comic book. It's just using the characters and the settings, I guess. So the plot here, and I'm not going to go too deep into like explaining to you how, like, who the Fantastic Four are, who Captain America is. I'm going to assume you have like at least the tangential knowledge of those characters going into it. So I'll be pretty quick in the synopsis here. But the Fantastic Four are attending Reed Richards' college reunion. He's Mr. Fantastic. And his roommate one of his classmates in college was Doctor Doom before he became, the Doctor Doom. He was just Victor Von Doom, a really just like egotistical scientist from a European, Latveria, a fake European country. So they're at the college reunion, and Doctor Doom shows up, but instead of causing mayhem, he invites everybody at the party back to his castle in Latveria for a tour, basically. And the Fantastic Four take him up on the offer. A lot of people at the party do, because they're like, oh, when's the next time, you're going to get an offer like this? Free round trip to a European country, pretty cool. So the FF go along to make sure that everything's on the up and up. And sure enough, Doctor Doom is a perfect host to the rest of the classmates, but he does set traps for the Fantastic Four. He separates them as a group and corners them in these deadly traps so that he can pursue this plan that he's got that'll grant him godlike powers. One of the biggest things that really holds this book back and makes it not a very enjoyable experience is that Marv Wolfman is very obviously only accustomed to writing for comic books. The dialogue is very like stilted and cheesy because like at this time, this was 1979, this book came out, and comic books were still being written in that voice that Stan Lee kind of created, where everyone speaks with like this purple prose. It's not very realistic dialogue at all. It's very cheesy. It's very on the nose. It repeats like what's going on in the scene. And in comic books, you can kind of get around that by the fact that you've got amazing artists that are punching things up. Stan Lee can write bad dialogue and boring stories when he's got Jack Kirby to fix things for him on the page, or Steve Ditko, or John Buscema, or as the years goes on, John Byrne, and all these great artists. But without that visual aspect, a lot is taken away from here, especially for a writer who doesn't have the chops to be writing prose. Marv Wolfman doesn't do enough here to like flesh out the characters or flesh out the world, like in the way that he describes the scene, the settings, what the characters are looking like. There's no flavor to it whatsoever. It's very just matter of fact. And again, the way that he's writing comics in the 70s, they're using the Marvel method, where they come up with a vague storyline and they tell the artist, go draw it. And then the artist does all of the work, draws everything, and then only after they get the art back does the writer actually go in and complete the story and then write the dialogue and all that. So Wolfman doesn't have an artist here to plot out the action for him. It doesn't have an artist to paint the picture for him. He's got to do it all on his own, and he really doesn't meet the task, unfortunately. He's a really good comic writer. I'm not trying to put Marv Wolfman down. I mean, he's done some great work. His Teen Titans is awesome. I really want to read his Tomb of Dracula. He's got a great underrated series for DC called Night Force, which was awesome. So he's really good with comics, but he unfortunately was really not cut out for this. He also struggles with just like narrative flow. At one point in the story, we are told the entire life story of Doctor Doom, and it stops the progress of the actual narrative completely dead because that origin goes on for multiple chapters, and it just completely it just butchers the momentum. So was really disappointed in this one. You lose a lot. I don't know that these characters work outside of comic books because they are so comic booky. It's one thing to just say like Reed Richards stretches his arm and then give no further description, whereas in a comic book, Reed Richards stretching his arm, you can do incredible like foreshortening. You can go across all the way across the page. You can really play with that to sell it. But if you're not going to sell it here, you might as well just like not really do it. So big disappointment for the Fantastic Four book. However, I was extremely impressed with Captain America: Holocaust for Hire. This one, I read this one second. So after Doomsday, I was like, okay, I think I have a pretty good idea of like the quality of these books. They really didn't put too much effort into them. So I had very low expectations for this one, and I was completely blown away by it. This was such a fun, wonderful read, and I'll explain why. But really quick plot synopsis. A seismologist is kidnapped by the Red Skull and is forced to develop a weapon which can destroy cities by simulating earthquakes. And so Captain America is just on the trail trying to rescue the scientist, trying to stop the Red Skull. He gets help from Nick Fury along the way. So it's not just Captain America. And it is a lot of fun. And the reason for that is the writer. So Joseph Silva is actually a pseudonym for Ron Goulart. I think that's how his name is pronounced. I don't know. But Ron Goulart is an actual writer. He was a very prolific paperback pulp writer in the 70s and in this time period in general, for decades actually. And so the difference between these books is night and day, because here you have someone who's actually used to writing pulp fiction, and it absolutely shines. It's so much fun. From the very first paragraph, I can tell that it was going to be a completely different experience because it had that flavor. It wasn't just matter of fact, like this is what's happening. He, used his words to set a scene, to create a feeling in the reader. And it was just really surprising to see. The action scenes were very well communicated and clear to follow. Silva also he also gives us multiple character point of views, and he's able to go back and forth between them without making it confusing or losing his momentum. He even also throws in origins in here, just like Wolfman did. He gives us an origin of Captain America and the Red Skull, but instead of just info dumping them all at once, he pieces them out in relevant places throughout. So it's a smart move by a veteran prose writer. This one feels also a lot more adult than the Fantastic Four book, which was very, very just anesthetized and sterile. This one has some blood in it, got some violence. The bad guys are mostly Nazis, and they are pretty vocal about the groups of people that they do not like. Like, you're not going to get any like hard slurs in this book, but they are definitely pretty flippant with the kind of language they use to describe those that they are oppressing. And on that point, the dialogue has really good rhythm and snap to it. Each character sounds very distinct from each other. Nick Fury, in particular, was a lot of fun to read because of this. He very kind of, cigar chomping, uh, older guy who's fighting off the fact that he's getting old and not willing to accept it. He's very funny. He's very like tough and like mule headed, and it comes across really well. Just everyone's character is really well defined here, and I was just so impressed. There's also a really funny thing that Silva or Goulart includes. Despite the fact that all of the villains are like already terrible, evil, racists, and you're already not going to like them because of that. In addition to that, he adds in that they are incredibly rude to food service employees. There are two different scenes here in which one of the bad guys, completely separated from each other, receive food that they ordered and are just miserable to the food service employee for getting the order wrong. And it's like just one more thing. Like there's always and it's just that like stuff like that where you just push it a little bit, add a little bit more flavor. Don't just keep things surface level. Give a little bit more character to all these bad guys and all these side characters. Overall, this was a really satisfying read. It read like a PG-13 men's adventure novel, and it made me want to look up more books by Ron Goulart because if he can do this without like the extreme violence and the sex and the stuff that comes with like a regular men's adventure novel, I want to see what he does when we get R-rated, because very impressive to be able to water that down and still have it come across really well. So that's it. I would like to read some more of these Marvel novels. I don't know that I'm going to like go out of my way for them because I think a lot of them are written by the comic book writers. And I mean, if Marv Wolfman's effort is any indication, I don't have high hopes for it. And also, I have a feeling that these were churned out pretty quickly just to make a quick buck off of the paperback boom. So if you see these in a secondhand shop and you're a comic fan, pick one up, especially the Captain America one. I really, really recommend this one. I'm going to give Fantastic Four Doomsday arbitrarily a 4 out of 10. And Captain America, I'm going to give this an 8 out of 10 because I enjoyed it so much. I mean, it's not high art, but it's a lot of fun. So do with that what you will. Let me know if you've ever come across these, if you've ever read them yourself. Let me know your thoughts. Thank you very much for spending some time with me today. But now it's time to get back to reading.